Invito ahora al representante de Turquía a tomar asiento a la mesa del Consejo.
Cyprus National Guard. I am particularly grateful that Council has agreed to postpone its meeting until my arrival here to give me the opportunity of addressing it on the recent dramatic events in Cyprus. What has been happening in Cyprus since last Monday morning is a real tragedy. The military regime of Greece has callously violated the independence of Cyprus, without trace of respect of the democratic rights of the Cypriot people, without trace of respect of the independence and sovereignty of the Republic of Cyprus. The Greek junta has extended its dictatorship to Cyprus. It is indeed a fact that, for some time now, their intention was becoming obvious. The people of Cyprus had for a long time the feeling that a coup by the Greek junta was brewing, and this became more intense during the recent weeks when the terrorist organization ΟΛΟΚΛΗΡΗ, directed from Athens, had renewed its wave of violence. I knew all along that this illegal organization had its roots and supply resources in Athens. I became aware that the Greek offices staffing and commanding the National Guard were recruiting members for this organization, and they supported it in various ways to the point of access to the munition supply stores of the National Guard. On the camps of the National Guard, the Greek officers were conducting open propaganda in favor of this illegal organization and turned the National Guard from an organ of the state into an instrument of subversion. Whenever, from time to time, I complained to Athens for unbecoming conduct by Greek officers of the National Guard, the reply was that if I had concrete evidence in proof thereon, those found guilty would be recalled. By the whole tenor of their attitude, I got the unmistakable impression that their standard response was a pretense of innocence. A few days ago, documents came to the hands of the Cyprus police clearly proving that ΟΛΟΚΛΗΡΗ was an appendage of the Athens regime. First, I was waiting for a reply. My impression was that the Athens regime did not favor the reduction of the force, much less the withdrawal of the Greek offices. The Greek ambassador in Cyprus called on me on instructions from his government in order to explain to me that the decrease in the numerical strength of the National Guard or the withdrawal of the Greek officers will weaken the defense of Cyprus in case of danger from Turkey. This was an argument which, even though it appeared logical, was not convincing, because I knew that behind this argument other interests were hidden. I replied that as things developed, I considered the danger from Turkey of a lesser degree than the danger from them. And it was proved that my fears were justified. On Saturday, July 13, a conference under the presidency of General Gizikis was held in Athens, which lasted for many hours. It was attended by the Greek Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces, the Ambassador of Greece to Cyprus, the Commander of the National Guard, and by other officials for the purpose of discussing the content of my letter. As was stated in a relevant communiqué issued at the end of this conference, it was to be reconvened on Monday, 15 July. The reference in the communiqué that there was to be a second conference was deceiving. For while on Monday I was waiting for a reply to my letter, the reply came and was the coup. On that day, I returned from my summer house on the Troodos Mountains, where I had spent the weekend, and by 8 a.m. I was at my office at the Presidential Palace. Half an hour later, I was welcoming in the reception room a group of boys and girls, members of the Greek Orthodox youth from Cairo, who came to Cyprus as my guests for a few days. Hardly had I greeted them when the first shots were heard. Within seconds, the shots became more frequent, and the member of the Presidential Guard informed me that armored cars and tanks passed the fence and were already in the yard of the Presidential Palace, which was shaking from mortar shells. The situation soon became critical. I tried to call the Cyprus radio station for the purpose of issuing a special broadcast announcing that the Presidential Palace was under attack, but I realized that the lines were cut off. Heavy shelling was ever increasing. How was my life saved seemed like a providential miracle. When I eventually found myself in the area of Paphos, I addressed the people of Cyprus from a local radio station, informing them that I am alive and that I will struggle with them against the dictatorship which the Greek regime is trying to impose. I do not intend to occupy the time of the members of the Security Council with my personal adventure. I simply wish to add that during the second day of the armed attack, the armored cars and tanks were moving towards Paphos, while at the same time a small warship of the National Guard began shelling the bishopric of Paphos, where I was staying. Under the circumstances, I found it advisable to leave Cyprus rather than fall in the hands of the Greek junta. I am grateful to the British government, which made available a helicopter to pick me up from Paphos, transfer me to the British bases, and from there by plane to Malta and London. I am also grateful to the Special Representative of the Secretary General and to the Commander of the Peacekeeping Force in Cyprus for the interest which they have shown for my safety. My presence in this room of the Security Council was made possible thanks to the help given to me by the British government and the representatives of the Secretary General, Dr. Waldheim, whose keen concern for me and for the critical situation which developed in Cyprus moves every fiber of my heart. I do not know as yet all the details of the Cyprus crisis caused by the Greek military regime. I am afraid that large is the number of casualties and heavy is the material destruction. What is, however, our primary concern at present is the ending of the tragedy. When I reached London, I was informed of the content of the speech of the representative of the Greek junta to the United Nations. I was surprised at the way they are trying to deceive world public opinion without a blush. The Greek junta is making efforts to simplify the situation, claiming that it is not involved in the armed attack and that the developments of the last few days are an internal matter of the Greek Cypriots. I do not believe that there are people who accept the allegations of the Greek military regime. The coup did not come about under such circumstances as to be considered an internal matter of the Greek Cypriots. It is clearly an invasion from outside in flagrant violation of the independence and sovereignty of the Republic of Cyprus. The so-called coup was the work of the Greek officers staffing and commanding the National Guard. I must also underline the fact that the Greek contingent, composed of 950 officers and men stationed in Cyprus by virtue of the Treaty of Alliance, played a predominant role in this aggressive affair against Cyprus. The capture of the airport outside the capital was carried out by officers and men of the Greek contingent camping near the airport. It is enough to state on this point that certain photographs appearing in the world press show armored vehicles and tanks belonging to the Greek contingent in Cyprus. On the other hand, the Greek officers serving with the National Guard were directing the operations. In these operations, they recruited many members of the terrorist organization EOKAMB, whom they armed with weapons of the National Guard. It may be said that it was the Cyprus government which invited the Greek officers to staff the National Guard. I regret to say that this was a mistake on my part to bestow upon them so much trust and confidence. They abused that trust and confidence, and instead of helping in the defense of the island's independence, sovereignty and territorial integrity, they themselves became the aggressors. The representative of the Secretary General and two constitutional experts from Greece and Turkey have been attending the talks. The Security Council has repeatedly renewed twice yearly the mandate of the peacekeeping force in Cyprus, expressing every time the hope for a speedy solution of the problem. It cannot be said that up to now the progress of the talks has been satisfactory. But how could there be any progress in the talks while the policy on Cyprus of the regime in Athens has been double-faced? It was agreed by all the parties concerned that the talks were taking place on the basis of independence. The regime of Athens agreed also to that, and time and again the Greek Ministry of Foreign Affairs declared that the position of Greece on this issue was clear. If that were the case, why had the military regime of Greece created and supported the terrorist organization OGAMB, whose purpose was stated to be the union of Cyprus with Greece, and whose members called themselves unionists? Inside the camps of the National Guard, the Greek officers continually accused me that while enosis was feasible, its realization was undermined by me. When reminded that Greece has made its position clear on this and that it supported independence, their reply was that no attention should be given to the words of diplomats. Under such circumstances, how was it possible for the talks to arrive at a positive result? The double-faced policy of the Greek regime was one of the main obstacles to the progress of the talks. To use all ways and means at its disposal so that the constitutional order in Cyprus and the democratic rights of the people of Cyprus can be reinstated without delay. As I have already stated, the events in Cyprus do not constitute an internal matter of the Greeks of Cyprus. The Turks of Cyprus are also affected. The coup of the Greek junta is an invasion, and from its consequences suffer the whole people of Cyprus, both Greeks and Turks. It is not possible for the role of the peacekeeping force to be effective under conditions of a military coup. The Security Council should call upon the military regime of Greece to withdraw from Cyprus the Greek officers serving in the National Guard and to put an end to its invasion of Cyprus. Mr. President, I think that with what I have placed before you, I have given a picture of the situation. I have no doubt that an appropriate decision of the Security Council will put an end to the invasion and restore the violated independence of Cyprus and the democratic rights of the Cypriot people.
Intervention is a ruthless violation of the basic principles of international law and of the United Nations Charter, for which the government of Greece bears full responsibility. The Yugoslav peoples and their government followed with keen sympathy and supported the liberation struggle waged by Cypriot people against colonialism and are well acquainted and familiar with tireless efforts of President Makarios to preserve the freedom, independence and integrity of Cyprus. That is why we find especially revolting the fact that the putschists had directed their criminal action to the liquidation of President Makarios, symbol of that struggle, outstanding fighter for equal and democratic relations in the world, and veteran champion of the policy of non-alignment since the very first day of his country's independence. The putsch protagonists and those behind them are making impossible the positive development of relations between the two communities on the island. Their criminal action involves the peoples of Cyprus in a new and grave hardship, while also generating the possibility of a renewal of mutual bloodshed. Consequently, It threatens most directly peace and security, especially in the Mediterranean and in Europe, and injects new elements of tension into this important and sensitive region of the world. For all these reasons, Mr. President, my government considers it indispensable that the urgent action be taken by the Security Council. It is indeed regrettable that the Council did not act decisively at its first meeting on this question on the afternoon of July the 16th, in spite of the urgency, clearness of the case, and the specific proposals made by Permanent Representative of Cyprus, Ambassador Asidis.
As known, Mr. President, consistent with her policy, Romania resolutely declares herself against every act of strength and every form of immixture in the internal affairs of other states, for strict observance of the principles of national independence and sovereignty, of the right of all people to develop freely and self-dependently, to decide their own destiny in keeping with their interests, without any outside immixture. No state, under any circumstances, in any form, and with any reason, should be allowed to impose its will upon another state, another people, or another government. Imposing a foreign will cannot help but lead to tension and conflict, and this runs counter to the positive course of detente taking place in the world, including Europe, the Balkans, and the Mediterranean area. Mr. President,
Cyprus became an independent country in 1960 and was admitted to the United Nations. Cyprus became a party to the Treaty of 1960, which provided for certain unique constitutional arrangements and guarantees involving Great Britain, Turkey, and Greece. Later, the Security Council adopted Resolution number 186 in 1964, which established a United Nations peacekeeping force in Cyprus. As a result of these historical developments, the sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity of Cyprus came to be guaranteed multilaterally, and its constitutional arrangements also came to be an essential factor in the stability and peace of the region. Anything which upsets the delicate political balance implicit in these arrangements is bound to create a situation of the utmost concern to world peace. Today, we find this delicate balance upset by an unwarranted act of intervention. According to President Makarios, the Greek officers of the Cyprus National Guard spearheaded this armed intervention against the constitutionally established government of Cyprus.